All right then, gamers. It's about that time again. It's time for a tier list. In fact, oh boy, have I got a treat for all of you. In fact, today we have 3 tier lists to go over. I've been somewhat dissatisfied with the way I've done tier lists before for PvE content. I've always felt like I've been kind of comparing apples to oranges to an extent. So we're actually going to break down these tier lists into 3 categories. Offensive support, so things that do damage and apply, you know, boons, maybe heal a little bit, provide some kind of value to the group. Defensive support, so healers basically that also apply boons. And then finally, greedy DPS builds, right? They just pump the boss as hard as possible. So there it is. 3 categories, 3 different tier lists. You know, maybe at the end I'll get Journa to smush them all together into one giant one so you can see what it would look like if you did that. But I think this will actually really give us a better insight into the way the metagame looks, some of the strengths of the metagame, some of the weaknesses, where the gaps are, right? And just kind of like the state of the game in general by actually breaking it down a little bit and taking a look. And actually, I've got really good news about all of these tier lists, by the way, my friends, because I now have a website. Or rather, me and my team now have a website, hardstuck.gg, and you'll be able to find pretty much all of the builds that I talk about here. Funnily enough, even the core ones, or at least some variants of the core builds, actually, are going to be on hardstuck.gg. So, you know what? It's going to be linked in the description. It's going to be in the comment section of the video. Click on them. Get in there. Let's go big. I love to see that. And I actually want to give a little bit of a disclaimer. Before we get into this, I do actually want to quickly say that tier lists, they're kind of a for fun thing as well. And while I am going to be commenting on balance, usability, strengths and weaknesses of classes and where I think they are, like how powerful they are and how much you want them in your group and so on, and how much value they can deliver, I do want to say this is kind of a for fun thing. Don't take it super seriously. And just as a general note, by the way I'm going to rank things, I'm going to be ranking things based on pug scenarios, right? Not high level, like super tryhard play. It's going to be pug scenarios based on how much value you as an individual, if you play your build well, can bring to the table in a group. However, I will say that more or less every build I'm going to put here, I would actually say is 100% playable, and if you do a good job and you play your class well, you will actually be performing a role and contributing to the success of your team in a very positive way, right? Even if you see your favorite spec in C tier, that doesn't mean it's actually bad. It just means that stuff in like S tier and God Emperor tier are actually super busted and like really broken. But I would say that only the specs in kind of D tier and O no tier are kind of like, okay, you're maybe pushing it a little bit here. These are maybe not super good, but everything to C tier is very much going to be a solid, rock solid option that if you enjoy the class fantasy and the playstyle of, it's going to bring something to the table, and you're not going to be like, oh no, I'm trolling. Oh, I'm trolling. And to be honest, even the stuff in D tier would be classified as viable. It's just like, huh, why are you playing that? What's going on there, right? You know, and the oh no tier is going to be like, oh, well, I mean, well, that isn't very good. That isn't very good. So, without any further ado, let's leap into it. And I think that we know what we're doing here. Well, for a start, first tier list. This is going to be offensive supports. So, builds that do damage and also provide support. So, some kind of healing. Usually boon application is going to be typical here, but can actually be a whole bunch of different stuff there. But that's what we're talking about here. So, let's get into it. Where is the busted stuff? And actually, 100% top of my list is Firebrand. Still, it's been nerfed, but oh no, you can't stop the Emperor. Firebrand is still absolutely top tier in my opinion. It has stability, it has Aegis, it has a really strong group heal, an invaluable group heal with Toma Resolve, excellent damage output, solid crowd control when needed with abilities such as Sanctuary. It's the whole package. Even throws in some protection, bit of might, fury, quickness. You love to see it. It's just very good. And despite being nerfed, it's still an awesome pick. I don't think you're ever going to be in a group and go, oh, wow, I hate the fact that we have a quickness Firebrand here. It's just not going to happen. And the pairing here. The pairing is, of course, the Mechanist. And, you know, this build, you actually, weirdly enough, you don't necessarily see it that often, because typically people will actually play heal Mechanist, right? Because that build is so popular. In a way, this build, Power Alacrity Mechanist, is actually overshadowed by heal Mechanist, weirdly enough. But this build is, without question, excellent. Using the rifle weapon and a bunch of grenades and so on, you have great mobility with shift signet, great range damage, good area of effect damage, you're applying protection, you have stability access, alacrity, of course, might being thrown there too alongside fury. It's just great. It sustains itself well, it's very durable, has great crowd control baked into it as well because of the rifle toolkit and, of course, the mech. You can kind of unsummon the mech and drop it down again. It's just very, very good. Very, very good in general. Play a lack mech. Even though, again, it is somewhat unplayed, actually. Simply because of the fact that, again, heal Mechanist is so dominant in the metagame right now. Now it's time to move on to a Rising Star. And this might actually be a somewhat controversial pick, but I personally love this build. I've actually really enjoyed this build for a long time, even before End of Dragons, actually, before it even had quickness. Boon Herald, I thought was fantastic. It's just such a great build for filling the gaps in your group. It gives everyone in your squad 20% more boon duration when it's in glint because of the facet of nature, so everyone in your group is better at the game now. It's giving protection, a bit of might, swiftness, fury, right? Great crowd control effect, solid dash, rock solid damage, great self-sustain, excellent defensive tools baked into it. It's a fantastic package, and you can throw on Jalis as well and get some stability in the mix too. Awesome build, right? One of the absolute top builds right now, actually, I think. Particularly in... I would say that this build really shines in entry-level groups where boon uptime can be a bit patchy, and definitely open world as well, where, again, boon uptime can be a little bit patchy. Adding a boon herald, or, well, a power quickness herald, essentially, is going to stabilize your group like an anchor, like a rock. You can be the rock with the herald. Very nice. Okay. And next up, another build that actually is criminally underplayed, in my opinion. And that's actually going to be Spectre. And why don't you see Spectre that much? If it's so strong, where is it? Well, it mostly sees a lack of playability, again, kind of because of Mechanist. Players are really, you know, heal Mechanist is really, really popular right now. And there's a few other issues with Spectre as well. You need Ritualist gear to play Alacrity condition damage Spectre, which is the build I'm talking about here. And that's kind of annoying to get. And that definitely reduces play rate a lot, actually. You can go a few other different ways about it, as I understand it, to make the gearing a little bit easier. But that knowledge really isn't out there just yet. But this build is amazing. Every 10 seconds, you're basically going to full heal your entire squad with Consume Shadows. And overcap them with Barrier. Every 10 seconds or so, roughly. That's crazy. You have awesome crowd control and break bar crushing. Good, really robust damage. Some nice boons thrown in there with Well of Bounty. And of course you have your Siphon, which is going to, thanks to Thrill of the Crime, is going to give Fury, Swiftness, a little bit of might there. You've got your Alacrity in there. Just a great build. Super tanky, range damage. Only weakness is it does lack cleave damage a little bit. You know, it's a lot of single target stuff, but... just a great build. And you can even kind of switch into support mode as well, like single target someone and blast them with Barrier if they're pressured away from the group. Super high skill cap build. If you play this, you can carry hard, actually, with Spectre. Really, really fun build to play. I actually enjoy it a lot in raid speedrunning, actually, but certainly in group play as well, just like conventional standard play too. Awesome build. Extremely good. Another one coming up here is going to be Mirage. Somewhat underrated, actually. I think. And this is specifically talking about the Alacrity Mirage build. I think it's absolutely awesome. It delivers incredible damage output. Again, it's ranged too with using the staff, right? You have loads of utility baked in. You can use all the Mesmer goodness, right? You can use stuff like Portal. You can use stuff like Boon Rip. You can give stability there with your Mantra of Concentration, all that good stuff. 25 might thrown into that is a really nice bonus alongside your Alacrity. It's just a good build, right? It's just very, very good. Mirage, very, very, very good indeed, right? As that Alacrity support build. Excellent choice. Not much else to say about it. It's just very, very robust. This is a weird pick, and I'm going to put this here with a very heavy disclaimer. And in a way, I just pretend that it's not even on the tiers. Pretend that Scourge is kind of off to the side here. Or actually, even better, pretend that it's actually floating around constantly like this. It's like a non-corporeal form, just barely even connected to reality. But I'm gonna put it in S tier here. And what am I talking about here with the offensive support Scourge? Specifically, I'm talking about Blood Scourge. Could be any variant, actually, of this. It could be... just the regular Blood Scourge with full Viper, full DPS with Blood Magic. It could be Plague Doctor. It could be Celestial. Just any variant of Heal Scourge that does damage as well. Now, why is this build a little bit hard to evaluate? Because obviously, it's a ridiculously hard carry to the point where Heal Scourge fundamentally breaks PvE encounters. Right? In open world, in raids, even in fractals, although it really doesn't see a lot of play there. It turns out that being able to revive people constantly and drag them together with transfusion is busted, right? That mechanic just obliterates raid fights. And even though Heal Scourge can be a bit cumbersome to fit into a group, a lot of the time it's going to be kind of like a 2.5 healer. It doesn't quite fit in as well now that there's no 10 target stuff. It really thrived in that 10 target Druid, 10 target Tempest environment. It's still broken. And even though it doesn't have boons, if you're having difficulty... If you're struggling, Heal Scourge will help you get the kill. It's probably the single most impactful build that you can possibly play. It is broken if you play it well and you know how to use it. And that's why I kind of put it in S tier, weird tier. We'll see this later in the defensive support tier list, but I actually put it in a tier of its own there. And that's simply because it's just broken. It fundamentally breaks the game. It's a build that probably shouldn't exist. But there you go. Next up, A tier, Scrapper. Super underrated build. Awesome damage, genuinely awesome damage output, by the way. This is one of the highest damage quickness builds out there. Has great crowd control, is unkillable thanks to its barrier application. From just doing damage, it converts its damage into barrier. Has a built-in block, can revive allies with function gyro. Even actually uses throw mine now, so a little bit of free boon rip in there. Has a bunch of cool utility skills you can swap over to. It's just good. Everything about it is really good, actually, when it comes to Scrapper, actually. The only thing that holds us back from being an S-tier build is actually usability. You have to spam a lot of your skills off cooldown to apply quickness, and that means that it's hard to get value out of some of your skills. But because you can't use them responsively, reactively. For example, Firebrand, you can use everything reactively. Mech, you can use things somewhat reactively as well, right? But Scrapper, you struggle a little bit with that. You can't quite do that, and that's what holds this build back. If that got improved a bit, the way the quickness application was fixed, then this would 100%, no questions asked, be an S-tier build. Or you could also give it, say, protection. If it had protection uptime, I think that immediately upgrades it. Or, another utility boon, right? Maybe a bit of stability. You kind of can have it if you take Bulwark Gyro. It's okay, you can do that. You can kind of squeeze it in. Bit of a DPS loss, but that's okay, right? Same as Herald. But yeah, that's the thing that's kind of holding it back. But in general, an excellent choice. Very, very underrated, actually. And you get perma super speed, which, although is actually a lot of fun, is actually incredibly useful. You'd be amazed how good super speed feels when you take it away. I encourage everyone to try it. Go and get super speed in a raid and run around like crazy, and then take it away. You're going to feel like an absolute snail, right? Yeah. You're going to be a snail. But there it is. There you go. And yes, it does have a bit of protection if you take the heal gyro, and even like a bit of AoE healing. But it's like, could be better. Could be better. Needs a few little tweaks. Next up is going to be a bit of a surprising one. And I actually struggled to quantify this, but I actually think that I'm going to be rating these builds on how good they can be if you play really well. And Untamed, I think, is actually a very high skill cap build. However, if you play it well, you are monstrous. This is basically the condition damage Alacrity Untamed, or of course the power damage Alacrity Untamed. These builds are beasts if you can play them well. Maybe a little bit sensitive to how good your group is, which is kind of why I demoted it a little bit. Doesn't have a crazy amount of boon access, but I definitely think is a very strong option. Massive damage, and has the ability to be broken. Straight up. You, for example, you can take Nature Spirit on this build, and because you spam your, you reduce your cooldowns constantly by crowd controlling enemies and then activating the Grandmaster Trait Fervent Force to reduce your cooldowns, you can then spam your Elite Nature Spirit Revive, and you're kind of heal Scourge at that point. You can take Infinite Stability and Super Speed with Fortification, right? You can, you can Entangle for more damage, right? You have great crowd control, right? Because that's the basis of this build. You just spam your skills like crazy. You blast crazy amounts of DPS. This build is a monster when played well. Definitely a learning curve, but a lot of fun. I've actually recently become a massive Untamed enjoyer. Actually, I've been playing a lot of Untamed in open world and stuff like that. A great solo build. More on that at some point later, I imagine. But yeah, actually really, really good. Held back only by a little bit sensitive to how good your group is. And definitely like a very hard build to play. But there you go. Very, very good build. Very good build. I think it's also worth noting, there's something that Sneb mentions a lot, actually. It has almost permanent projectile block, because you can just keep spamming your unleashed kind of poison cloud thing, which makes it very, very powerful, actually. That's all we're actually going to have in B tier. Sorry, in A tier. Now it's time for B tier. Here we go. Here we go. Chronomancer. I think a lot of people really think that Chronomancer is like, oh wow, worst build in the entire game. Actually, no. Very respectable build. Certainly kind of held together with Mesmer utility. One of the reasons why it's so good, in my opinion, is just has good Mesmer utility. Damage, not bad right now, actually. Has been improved over time. Could probably use a little bit of a nudge overall. But they increased the radius on the quickness. That's great. And you've still got all of the Mesmer goodness, right, on this power build. You can CC stuff with Moa, with Gravity Well, right? You can remove boons. You can portal. You can give stability. You can give Aegis as well as precognition, right? All the good stuff that Mesmer can bring to the table, you've still got it. Also, one of the best tanks in the game, of course, if not the best tank in the game, thanks to how strong the defensive capacity of Shield is with, a Phantasmal Avenger, right? Doubling that up, using your heal skill to then reset the cooldown. It's not an exam. Maybe it is. And then go around again. Just great. Just a very, very solid build, right? Underrated, in my opinion. I'd be very tempted to even nudge this up a little bit. The biggest enemy of Chronomancer, funnily enough, is actually kind of Virtuoso. Every time you're playing Chrono, you're going to be thinking, well, wait, why am I not playing Virtuoso and making someone else do quickness, right? That's kind of what's going on there, because a lot of the strength of, honestly, a lot of these Mesmer builds actually comes from core Mesmer being as efficient as it actually is. But there you go. Harbinger, up next. I'm not a big fan of this build, actually, personally. Some of that is because I'm not a huge fan of how Harbinger feels. It's not my favorite elite spec. It doesn't feel quite as meaty as Reaper or as broken as Scourge. But it absolutely is a high damage output, quickness provider. Throws in a bit of might, bit of fury in there as well. Well, permanent fury, actually, alongside quickness. Can do some Mesmer goodness. You can Epidemic, you can Spectral Grasp, all that kind of stuff. I find it a little bit inflexible and a little bit lacking in defensive support, but that's kind of the point, right? It's a very aggressive option, I think. So, yeah, I give it like it's B tier. It's not bad. It's pretty solid. Not too bad, not too bad. Definitely a good option, particularly if you like a more aggressive playstyle. In that same vein, Berserker, actually. This is kind of like the new build on the block, right? And it does great damage. A little bit of a slower ramp-up time, of course, but does bring good damage. Has cleave as well, because you put down these like big fire fields, all that kind of stuff. Has some utility boons too. You can kind of fit in the banners there that have resistance on them. You can give fury as well. You've got a bit of might coming through on this kind of stuff, which is good. Of course, to have. Again, the thing that really holds it back for me is usability. If banners got tweaked again so that you could use the drop boons on demand, that would be great. So when you drop down a banner, say when you drop down, what is it, Banner of Defense, you get Aegis and Barrier. When you drop down Banner of Tactics, you get Stability and Super Speed. If they had a flip over skill that you could activate while the banner was dropped to get that on demand, this build all of a sudden actually becomes really good. Has some awesome, really nifty utility with resistance. That's super cool. It's a very uncommon boon. If you could actually use Aegis, Stability, Super Speed on demand, this build is amazing. That's what's being held back by, is usability at the end of the day. in my opinion. Kind of similar to Bladesworn, right? That might be a controversial pick here, and this will be a bit of a thing that you'll see throughout this. Bladesworn does massive damage, of course, and can obviously apply quickness. However, I think that this mostly delivers value in ultra high level play. Like, for example, there was a record on Veil Guardian that was recently broken, using basically Bladesworn stacking to apply quickness. And just let's get this over with. In high level play, so speedrunning and stuff like that, and even really hard encounters like Harvest Temple Challenge mode, Bladesworn is absolutely god tier. It is insane. It does colossal damage output, but I think it's a little bit held back again by the usability of banners. In this case, this kind of quickness build that uses banners, and also, in general, it doesn't really have a crazy amount of carry potential, in my opinion, and it could be a bit chaotic to use, right? You know, you can't really move. You can teleport and use Aegis a little bit to, you know, not get hit while you're using your Dragon Trigger, but I think that's a little awkward, particularly in less organized groups that are going to be a little bit chaotic. And then rounding out B tier, it's actually going to be a build that I'm going to say I'm a little disappointed by. Don't let me put you off this build. But Tempest, actually. This is basically Alacrity DPS Tempest. It's okay. I did actually predict it would be stronger than it is. I was expecting it to be really good. However, I think, again, the way this build applies Alacrity is the root of its issues. And the way it applies some of its boons are the problem there, right? The shouts are very overloaded now, which makes it difficult to get full value out of them if you want to take, say, Stability, you want to take an Aegis, for example. Elementalist is also surprisingly reliant on its utility skills to do damage, and that actually greatly hinders its flexibility on all Elementalist specs, actually, because you're not exactly fully locked in, but you're a little bit locked into what utilities you want, because otherwise you're going to take some pretty big damage hits. And I just feel like it doesn't quite have the full support package, right? The boon radii are pretty small on a lot of these builds, right? On stuff like your Earth Overload, for example. And you kind of have to use your skills on a relatively tight rotation to get value out of them. So I think this build is pretty middle of the road. I'd like to see this build a lot better. I actually really like the idea of Tempest as an offensive support, but in my opinion, it's really not there yet. It's a fun build. I actually do enjoy playing it. You know, you can play some crazy variants like full DPS, Celestial, all that kind of stuff. But for me, not really there yet. I think a little bit underpowered, needs some buffs to just the general support capacity that it can bring to the table. I think looking at core weapon skills, like increasing the support on core weapon skills will be good, and slightly readjusting the Tempest trait line so you don't get so trolled when you want to apply Alacrity. Again, usability is actually what holds this build back. Numerically, it's good. It's got good numbers and the skills are good, but it's the usability compared to the other specs that weakens it. But there you go. And now it's C tier time. And it's time for some Elementalist. Yeah, it's Catalyst. This is one of those builds that in theory sounds good, but I don't think it's really there yet. I think Catalyst still really struggles with usability problems with the way energy works, for example. In a way, this build is, imagine Quickness Herald wasn't as good. Okay? That's basically what Catalyst is. Imagine if Quickness Herald, you know, had a trait that made you do 10% less damage. It just says do 10% less damage if you want to give boons. Now, funnily enough, actually, this build actually has great boon access. It has prot, it has resistance, you can do quickness, you can do a bit of might, you can do fury, right? Actually, really strong. You can throw a bit of vigor in there. Loads of great stuff, actually, on Catalyst. But again, it's usability that really holds it back. And I would say overall flexibility. It needs some better, I think Elementalist utility skill choices need to be a little bit better. Need to be a little bit more group-oriented and a little bit more flexible to use in general. I'd like to actually see a bit of healing. I'd like to see some of the support on Catalyst, like the healing and the barrier, be made somewhat area. So, you know, for example, when you block with your Hammer 4 on Earth, maybe half of the barrier gets shared to allies. Maybe some of your healing on your Water 4 skill actually heals allies too. So you have the ability to support players, not, you know, blasting a water field is good, but I'd actually like to see them lean into the hybrid element. I want to see them really capitalize on the hybrid nature of Catalyst and take it to that next level where it can deliver some really big value. But a surprisingly good build, actually. I think C tier is almost a little bit harsh, in fact, here, because I think if played well, you can certainly get some value there, but I think players don't like this, but it doesn't feel super good to play, and again, I think it does suffer from usability and just slightly being undertuned. Just, it wouldn't take much to make that build really good, though, by the way, it really wouldn't. And then, oh my goodness, how the mighty have fallen. Renegade. This is Alacrity Renegade. Power, Condi. I mean, Power, honestly, is like, that's a pretty sad build. It's alright, I guess. But Condi, Power, Alac Renegade. It's definitely, it's solid. It's not horrible, you know. I think a lot of people would say, oh, it's the worst build ever. And it certainly got hit hard by losing that 10 target access. The lack of 10 target, oh, pain, right? Not good. Not good at all. However, at the end of the day, it still functions. You can give Alacrity. You've got some good utility with your Callus, some very good crowd control and so on. It works, right? It works. Spellbreaker for another warrior there as well. Does decent damage. It's, well, okay damage, right? I think it's like high 20s, like 27k DPS. Gives quickness at the same time. I kind of go for this with the other warrior specs, but improve the usability and this gets a lot better. It's got some like niche, cool boon removal utility. Could definitely be a build that you see in certain fights where that boon removal is very, very valuable. But yeah, needs a bit more damage while you're giving quickness. Needs some more usability on banners, and then there's some potential there for sure. Same thing with Core Warrior, basically. I'm just putting there because it can give quickness, right? It can, so it's going there. Alac Willbender. This is just the build that ArenaNet forgot about. It's not even a joke, right? I don't... Yeah. I feel like Willbender was really hyped, but then everyone forgot about it. It's not that great. You can give Alacrity, but it's scuffed, and... I mean, you kind of get carried by Core Guardian utility, but it's not enough. You can't get carried that hard. And then finally, Alac Soul Beast. I mean, I probably wouldn't recommend playing Alac Soul Beast, to be honest. You know, like, it's like Scuffed Untamed, pretty much. I don't really like this build. The D tier might be a little bit harsh. You could actually argue to put that in C tier, I think, for sure. But I don't really see a lot of value in playing that build. Like, you know, you're better off playing the full damage variant and having someone else do Alacrity, or just, you know, just swapping to Untamed, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of this build whatsoever. You'd play it as a power build, I think, because it kind of makes more sense with nature magic to get the spirits in there, but nah, I don't think so. And finally, Core Ranger, because, I mean, technically speaking, you can give Alacrity on Core Ranger, the only core Alacrity build, but spoiler alert, it's not very good. Because in general, core specs pretty undertuned. Need a few more balance patches before core specs actually end up being good. But there you go. There it is. That's all I've got to say. And there it is. That rounds out the tier list for offensive supports. Offensive supports, done! Boom. Just remember what it is and what it represents. But yeah. I think I think we'll maybe do some kind of conclusions at the end, I think, and kind of go over all of the tier lists. So I won't actually do too much of a summary right now, but as you can see, the diversity is actually pretty solid, right? Again, like if you look at God Emperor through to C tier, there's actually a lot of options, right? Bear in mind that back in the day, it was like only Chronomancer, like only Druid, only Warrior. Right? I've actually got some good options, but more importantly, there's a lot of potential here. Warrior has got potential. Catalyst, Renegade, Chrono and Tempest have potential, especially Chrono, actually. Chronomancer is one of those builds that will just activate. I think with a few more buffs, a few more changes, it will get fully active and go really, really crazy, in my opinion, right? It's good. It's very, very good. But yeah, there it is. A lot of potential there. A few more patches, I think we're going to end up with a really healthy and diverse meta. And to be frank, even looking at this, it's one of the most diverse metas, fully enough, out there. It's just that players typically don't play a lot of the builds. There are loads of builds that are actually really good. People just don't play them. Like, the devs that are like, oh, I'm so excited to see them play Spectre, you know, and Herald, and Scrapper. And I was like, oh, well, no, you know what? I'm only going to play Mech. I refuse to play anything else. I was like, oh, no. And just wait until they add Quickness Share Reaper, God Emperor ++. Yeah, okay. I saw a really funny suggestion on SC Discord, actually. They make a trait that whenever you get knocked out of Shroud by taking damage, you share Alacrity to nearby allies on Reaper. I like that. That's good. That is pretty funny, actually. That entertains me. Okay, but that rounds out the offensive support. Let's move on to the next one. Okay. And look, just like that, we've got ourselves a fresh tier list. It's time for defensive supports. Now, there are not going to be that many things on this tier list because this is one of the really remarkable things about the meta. There kind of aren't that many defensive supports, weirdly enough, actually. There aren't actually that many, which is very unusual. You know, it's something that I think doesn't get talked about enough. And actually, funnily enough, this lack of diversity in the defensive support category, in my opinion, is actually a really big part of why the meta tends to get a little bit stuck. Because the Guild Wars 2 meta is very support-oriented, and in a lot of ways very healer-oriented. And because there are only a few options, the things that will kind of be the other half of the support, like the quickness builds, will be the ones that pair best and, like, combo the best with, like, the really strong healing builds, right? And that actually massively limits what builds are good. And that's why we don't see a huge amount of quickness diversity in the meta, is because you only see the ones that are the perfect partners, basically, to the defensive supports. But yeah. Let's go ahead and leap on right into it. And actually, first things first, going to add a row above here. As promised, I am actually going to add Heal Scourge tier. And it's going to have exactly Heal Scourge. It's going to be a nice green. Nice green there, I think. Is that the right green? That's a pretty good green. And yeah, Heal Scourge tier. This is, frankly, the most broken build in the game. You are pumping out ridiculous barriers, like 5k plus every 6 seconds or so. You can revive 5 allies every 10 seconds. On fights where you don't care about DPS, which is basically every fight in the game, and where things don't instantly kill you, which again is basically every fight in the game, this is broken. It fundamentally breaks the game. It is the strongest build in the game by far. It doesn't see a lot of play because, again, you do sack DPS for it, and players tend to value DPS a lot, but if you're struggling in a raid, this build will drag you through it, kicking and screaming. Of course, loses value if once you don't need it anymore, right? Once you've kind of got the hang of things, and maybe you're in a static group and so on. Not really, bit overkill at that point, but certainly for pug runs and even kind of getting players through content, just trying to get your clear, just get it done after a bit of a grind, bit of a rough day. Heal Scourge is just, there's nothing quite like it, to be honest. It's pretty crazy. And then God Emperor is heal mech. Heal mech has actually been nerfed, and the stability nerf hit it hard. The healing nerf wasn't that relevant, to be honest. I barely even noticed it. You still heal an absolute metric ton, to be honest. Great at cleansing conditions, great sustain healing, solid burst healing as well, kind of across the board. The reason why this build, in my opinion, is so strong is because it just has a little bit of everything, and it has very high usability. So when I say usability, it doesn't have a rotation. You can use all of your skills on demand. Obviously, there are some skills like your regeneration and vigor. You kind of want to spam that off cooldown, but almost everything else is very reactive. You can use it when you want to. You can barrier when you want to. You can drop your healing down when you want to, right? And so on. You can use your stun break and apply stability and Aegis when you want to. You're very free to use things. And to be honest, that's actually what really sets this build out in front. Like, its healing output, there are better healers. Druid is a better healer than mech. And that might sound weird, but it's true. Druid heals more. It heals a lot. But Druid doesn't have all the barrier replication. Oh, that's not good. Druid doesn't have that crazy stability access or like easy access to that on-demand F2, right? Oh, that's unfortunate, right? These are the things that make Mechanist so, so strong. The passivity of it as well is huge. The fact that the mech can just kind of be on your group and you're going away doing mechanics, that's amazing. You have a lot of stuff you can use at range, like your, your elixir gun to kind of throw down a super elixir on people. You've got amazing crowd control too. It's just, honestly, it's the perfect support package, and it still is, right? It's incredibly strong. All the abilities are very overstacked. You're throwing out crazy passive barrier all the time with basically no cooldown. That's what makes it strong. I expect that we'll see cooldown increases to a lot of the barrier application, because that's actually what's going to really really make the difference. And to kind of reflect that, I'm actually going to go ahead and just leave S tier empty because I really want to illustrate that I do believe there is a significant gap between Mechanist and Firebrand and the next thing. Heal Firebrand is definitely the next thing, and it's almost a little bit situational. I really like Heal Firebrand in situations where you can block stuff. Hey, no shit, right? But when there's attacks that are blockable, fights like Doom, for example, when there's like massive attacks that can be blocked, or Demos, right? That's where this build really shines with that Aegis spam. Again, in Fractals too, for example. That's where it really shines. And to be honest, when you're talking about that scenario, you're definitely getting towards the S tier, simply because of how amazing that is. The reason why I would put it in A tier is because essentially regular Firebrand can do that too. Quickness Firebrand can do that. The DPS variant, right? You can take Advance. You can take Stand Your Ground, right? You can do a lot of these things on that build, and that means that you kind of lose value on this build, because like by running Heal Firebrand, you're not running Heal Mech, if that makes any sense, right? And that's where you kind of drop down a little bit. And so A tier, just a very, very good healer. Very, very good. Very, very good healer. And now we're actually going to need another tier. I'm going to have to quickly add this in because we need this to be blue. Oh, no, hang on. Oh no, I've screwed up my tier list. Hang on. We need this to go ahead and be blue, and this is going to be Scuffed Mechanist tier, because that is exactly what this next build is, and it's Druid. In a lot of ways, Druid functions extremely similarly to Mech. You can have your pet on the group. It can give Aegis now with the White Tiger. You can ranged heal people. You have your spirits, pulsing boons. They don't get crowd control anymore. Really nice change, by the way, actually. Your spirits don't get knocked around, and neither does your pet. That makes them way more usable and way more reliable, actually. A really subtle change in one of the recent patches, but actually a big deal. Actually, a big deal. But essentially, yeah, what holds it back is usability. I think that you don't overcap on boons that well. You need like exactly 100% boon duration to upkeep stuff, which kind of sucks. Accessing stability is super awkward. You take Glyph of Equality, then you have to go in CA and then use Glyph of Equality while in CA. That's kind of situational in a way, right? You have to be really careful with your cooldown management there. It's a bit awkward, right? It's a bit weird to do that. And just in general, it's not... I don't think it really has the stability axis. It doesn't really have that level of convenience and level of ease of use. Or not even easy use, because it's not that these builds are easy. Heal Mech is actually surprisingly hard to play. So is Druid, by the way, actually. It's more like... it's the way the abilities are designed allows them to always get value. Whereas Druid, I think you're going to struggle to get value out of the skills a little bit more, even if you play really well. Which is kind of where the issue with this build comes in. It's like heavily limited by its usability and kind of the hoops you have to jump through to actually do stuff. It's just weird. But actually, underrated. I think a lot of people, again, think Druid is really bad. Not the case. It's actually very much a solid option, especially now after the recent changes that give it that. It heals like, it's actually an insane healer, right? This healer is crazy. It really is. Massive output at range. Love to see that. You know, slap on your Glyph of Unity, and goodness me, everyone around you is immortal, right? Really cool utility like Glyph of the Stars to make people immune to Condis. You can entangle, you can... And look, you're still indispensable when it comes to pushing things, right? You can push the Flesh Golem around. You've got Glyph of the Tides, Longbow, really good crowd control and so on. An excellent build. It really is. Indispensable in certain encounters. And I think, again... this is one of those builds. Keep your eye on this. If you're a Druid main, honestly, start getting back in the Druid right now. Couple patches down the line, this build is absolutely on the rise. ArenaNet have got their eye on it, and so should you. And now, we've got to move down a tier again. We're going to be doing B tier, and that's actually going to be Herald and Tempest. I would have rated Tempest a bit higher, but then I thought about it and realized that, no, actually. And I am the biggest Tempest simp you're gonna find, right? I'm a big simp for Tempest. I love it. I love Heal Ellie. One of my favorite builds in the game. But I do really think that the design direction it's taken has caused issues. You don't heal on your auras anymore. You have to take the Alacrity trait to give Alacrity, right? And you give up your healing on Elemental Bastion. That's a big deal, right? You no longer... all of your healing is now super small radius instead of the 600 radius that you had before, which was really nice. We do have Aegis and stability. with Eye of the Storm and Aftershock. That's awesome. But here's the thing, right? There's a few issues that hold it back. It's difficult to use these skills because you kind of need to semi-spam those abilities to keep up boons as well. So really activating them to get the Aegis from Aftershock and the stability from Eye of the Storm is kind of weird, right? It's a bit unusual. Your healing output is unusual. You have to follow a relatively strict rotation to apply Alacrity and get quite cumbersome overloads and fully channel them as well. Ugh, I mean, I'm not a fan. Like, yeah, if everyone stays together and you're stacked up, your healing sustain is great. And you can even take the arcane trait line these days for much more robust boon application, and the revival trait too, which is awesome for getting allies back on their feet and resustaining people with the geyser that it spawns. That's really great. You can very easily take, you know, a Glyph of Renewal. You can take Signet of Water for a ranged heal. Scepter's actually a really cool weapon right now as well for another ranged heal. But I still think a lot of the core weapons aren't quite there. In my opinion, to really make this build truly shine. I think Tempest is actually overrated, as much as it pains me to say that. Overrated build. Needs a bit more. I like the boon extension, though. Boon extension on Warhorn. Nice. I like that. I like that a lot. And Herald. Herald is... Heal Herald's a bit awkward. The recent changes to Ventari, oh my god. The usability... Actually, really cool. Don't underestimate this. The big issue that this build suffers from is that it can't really fit stability or Aegis in, and it's hard to do that because of Revenant's design. You can only have 2 legends, right? You can go, oh, I want stability with Jalis. Well, hang on a minute. Now I've got no Ventari. Now I've got no Glint. That ain't good. But ridiculous healing. Ridiculous. You're talking like 1k regen ticks. Absurd. Burst off the charts, and completely away from you. You can move the tablet any way you want, right? You can be really far away from it. You're blasting healing, you're cleansing, you're blocking projectiles. On that set with Ventari, nice. Right? Actually good. But again, it's the thing that really defines supports is kind of utility boon access. And of course, you could maybe pair this with, let's say, an Alacrity mech, right? And that can throw a bit of stability into the mix there with some Aegis there as well. You could throw it in with an Alacrity Spectre to have some barrier going. I actually really think that if there was another Alacrity provider that had stability access, Heal Rev. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, to be honest, that would be super cool. So, like an offensive Alacrity build that has loads of stability. Okay. Now we're in business. So, for example, if Alacrity Tempest, let's say offensive support Alacrity Tempest. So DPS Alac Tempest had 3 stacks of stability on Eye of the Storm, and they made Aftershock do some more damage, so that, you know, you could take those abilities and still maintain good damage. Okay. Ooh. Now this build is super spicy, super juicy, because it combos really well. It just kind of lacks that synergy with the rest of the metagame to really shine right now, in my opinion. C tier is Scrapper. Heal Scrapper. Underrated, actually. I think many people would rate this lower. Underrated build. Underrated. Overshadowed by the God Emperor, of course. But not bad. Not bad, yeah. Not bad. Not bad. It's okay. I don't hate it. You heal a lot. You give super speed. That's pretty cool. You can do all the good stuff. You can do your prot. Kind of lacks some of the boons. You've got a bit of might application thrown in there. You can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You can kind of squeeze stability into your build as well, the Bulwark Gyro. The problem here is really... The problem here, again, is that Scrapper design. You kind of have to mash your abilities to give quickness, right? You need to use your, especially with the Blast Gyro for the coating, right? Like, was it like apply coating, whatever? Because that gives you more quickness application with the super speed. So you need Blast Gyro, otherwise it's going to be weird. You've got to mash your skills a lot. Function Gyro is really nice. You've got great healing. You're super tanky, so you're a really good tank as well. You can run the shield as well. But to me, doesn't really quite have what it takes to really kind of get up there. It's just really held back by how it actually plays out in a real encounter, right? It's got the numbers to back it up, but the way those numbers work are blech. in my opinion, for Heal Scrapper. Not cutting it for me. Not cutting it for me, my friend. And now let's get into the D tier. The D here is for disappointing. Okay? It's the disappointing. And let's just get this over with. Heal Bladesworn, Heal Chrono, Heal Willbender, Heal Spectre. Most disappointing build ever. Heal Catalyst, ooh, also very disappointing. And Heal Renegade, ooh, ow. Right? Yeah, that's unfortunate. These builds are just incomplete, right? They're unfinished. I actually love the idea of Heal Warrior. I love Warhorn. Super cool. Loving that barrier. Charge. Really cool skill with your quickness on there as well. Love it. I think, Shout Heal, right? You're dropping your banners down, right? I actually really like this spec. I think that Bladesworn just needs, like, a proper weapon. Give it Staff. Boom! And you're in business, right? Then you've got, like, a proper weapon. It needs, like, a proper main hand weapon. Like Staff, Sword, Warhorn. Something like that. All right. Okay. All right. I think we can make that work. Maybe look at the defense trait line as well. Buff the defense trait line to make... to kind of give it a third trait line. I'd almost be... You know what would be really cool? I think the ideal Heal Warrior build is actually Core, right? So you'd have Discipline, Tactics, and Defense. Right? And then you give it Staff. Give Staff to Core Warrior or something like that. That would be weird. I don't know how they do that. And then Staff is like a healing weapon. And you do Staff and then Mace Warhorn. So you've got great CC because you've got the Core Burst. So you've got like a Mega CC there. You've got your Barrier. You've got Vigor. You've got Resistance. You got Might, Fury, Quickness, all that kind of other stuff. Ooh. Nice. But again, that doesn't exist. We're talking Fantasyland right now. We're in Fantasyland, guys. Okay? Simple as that. Heal Chrono. This build uninspires me. You know, I look at it and I go, wow, what have they done to Inspiration Chrono? Poor Inspiration Chrono. It does have all the Chrono goodness. It can do all the utility, but I don't think it's that good. The way it heals is weird. It's kind of like when you summon your clones, you heal a lot. When you drop wells down, you heal. That, to me, is bleh. You know, you don't really want to be stacking a bunch of wells anyway, really, in the ideal scenario. Like, that's why the whole, like, Alack Chrono thing is a bit meh, because you don't... All the Mesmer cool stuff is not really on wells. It's kind of on the core Mesmer skills, right, actually? Outside of Precog, obviously, but you can do, you know, you can do Stab, you can do Aegis, you can heal a little bit, you can CC well, right? You're a Chrono, you heal a little bit. You know, you've got some good output there, but you don't really have the full healer toolkit, in my opinion. For Chrono Monster. Willbender, this is just kind of a meme build. You can give Alacrity and heal, but, you know, you sacrifice so much to do this, right? And by sacrifice a lot, I mean you're not playing Firebrand. Mistake. Heal Spectre. Actually, note. Very important note for Heal Spectre. One of the most fun builds to play in the entire game. And I actually mean that. I had an absolute blast playing this in Raid Pugs. You know, I played it in the beta a lot, actually, when they were doing the EOD betas. It is so much fun to play with the Shade Step, Revive stuff. You kind of target people in downside and you zap them with Siphon and res them back up again. You're trying to get people with your AoE barrier. One of the reasons why it was so insane is because in the beta, you could actually revive people with Consume Shadows. It healed players in downstate, so you could actually res them up by leaving Shroud, which is crazy. They actually removed that and fixed that. That kind of, in my opinion, moved the build away from being like, ooh, this is kind of like Heal Scourge, but not as good, into a build that doesn't really exist. You just don't really have the trait line support for this, to be honest, to actually make it do anything. And as a result of that, it's fun, but it's disappointing. Okay, Catalyst! Also D tier. I got a little bit excited about this. I saw a rotation for this. I saw a build for this. And I got excited. I was like, ooh. Ooh! Quickness, heal, Catalyst. You got all the boons. We got resistance, we got prop, we got might, we got fury, we got quickness. But it turns out you can only heal in water and with your water elemental, which is a bit, that's not that good. It's just a little bit too weird to use. Like, only, a lot of your skills just don't really do that much, is the reality. You can use Staff, so if you're a Staff Ellie fan, heal Catalyst, let's go. And it's definitely, like, it's okay, right? It's not unplayable for sure, but I don't see it as particularly delivering a lot of value. I'm not gonna lie. And Heal Renegade. Okay. Heal Renegade. Well, I mean, what can I say? This is probably one of the more depressed builds out there. It's not what it once was, okay? It used to be pretty good, but it's been outvalued by basically everything these days. I don't really see it as delivering a lot of value, to be honest, overall. It could be a good build down the line, but it needs to have some kind of unique selling point. Right now, it doesn't have a unique selling point. It had Soul Cleave, but now those days are long behind us. Unlucky. And you're not even 10-man anymore. Unlucky. You know, Renegade, definitely a victim of Ender Dragons. Bit of an oofy. Ah, yeah. Final meme. Heal Vindicator in Oh No tier. I say Oh No tier because there was actually a spicy build you could run. You could get a little frisky. You could be a little frisky, actually. You know, you could. With a bit of alacrity application with Ventara. You had, you know, boon extension. You had your pro, all that kind of stuff. Removing the alacrity killed this. Completely killed it. In my opinion. I mean, you could actually argue it's a bit of a carry build, right? But I think the really big issue, again, is design here. Like, if you can either have boons and boon extension, or you can have barrier and healing on dodge roll. The barrier on heal is actually pretty wild, right? It's actually pretty great. The numbers are, ooh. But they don't mean anything. So yeah, unlucky. It's not really a build anymore. It crumbled the dust. Okay. And oh, yes, I almost forgot. One final thing. This is going in meme tier, and I'm making a new tier for this. I'm calling it Mr. Mystic tier. And again, this is my Untamed simping coming out. I saw Mr. Mystic play Heal Untamed, and I liked the video. It entertained me. I was amused. And therefore, I give it Mr. Mystic tier. I'm not sure if it's better than D tier or worse than C tier. Honestly, I don't know. I actually don't care. The build entertained me, and therefore, it's on my tier list because I watched it and I was like, wow, this is hilarious. Untamed is the most broken shit ever. Fervent Force, please don't remove it, ArenaNet. This class is ridiculous, and I love it. Therefore, it gets Mr. Mystic tier, actually. Honestly, I don't even know how to evaluate it. Who knows? You can spam your heal skill a lot. You can give some boons. You still have loads of CC, obviously, and you can revive people with Spirit of Nature. Make of that what you will. I don't have a clue. Yeah, that's it. I am aware that Heal Harbinger is there, but no. Okay, that does not make it onto the tier list. That doesn't entertain me enough. It's it was mild amusement, as opposed to actually I was entertained. Therefore, it doesn't make the cut. It's off the list. And now we're done with defensive supports, actually. Defensive supports are actually done. And just before we move on to DPS, actually, I think you can see where the issue with the metagame is, right? And again, I'm actually going to bring up the other tier list here, the offensive support one, as a contrast here. So this was offensive support, right? And this is defensive support. Do you see the issue here? Right? Defensive support is very, very top heavy. And what you'll actually notice is that there are a few builds that are pretty darn far ahead of the others. Right? And again, as we mentioned previously, you typically want to play builds that fit into the meta, right? And kind of gel well with each other. And because the defensive builds are a bit bottlenecked, that has a follow-up effect of massively bottlenecking the offensive supports, but also just the entire meta in general, right? And that's where we've actually got issues. If ArenaNet can say, okay, you know what? We're going to make Tempest all the way up to S tier. We're going to make, Herald really, really good. We're going to super buff some of these builds to really get them up there and bring Heal Warrior, make Heal Warrior a thing, right? Make Heal Chrono super, super good, right? Or make Heal Spectre really strong. And make some of the offensive alacrity options. This is another thing. Alacrity builds are definitely, a little bit not there yet. Again, if we look at our offensive builds here, a lot of them are actually quickness, right? They're all quickness a lot of the time. If there were some really strong, aggressive alacrity builds, I'm just saying, ArenaNet, make Tempest really OP, I'm just saying, then I think that would actually really help free up the meta a lot. A lot. But that's it for defensive supports. it's something, right? Let's move on to DPS. Right. This is going to be meaty as hell, because of course we're going to have to basically rate more or less everything in this one. This is going to be a meaty tier list, my friends. And it's the Greed Lords. It is the DPS builds. If you like seeing the big numbers, then, well, this is what you want to see. So, first of all, actually, I don't think any DPS build is fundamentally broken right now. I don't think there is a single DPS build that is in God Emperor tier. God Emperor is reserved for, this is actually busted. And surprisingly, I don't think anything is at that level of insanity, actually. I think S tier is as high as we're going here, right? You could definitely argue that Mirage... Yeah, Mirage is situationally God Emperor tier, because on the fights where Mirage dominates, it is... There's nothing that even compares, right, to the really strong Mirage fights. But, that's a little situational. Mechanist? No, I don't think that, I don't think the mech is actually fundamentally broken. I think that when Mechanist gets nerfed down to, like, 32k DPS, it's probably okay, right? Like, nerf to, like, 32-ish, right? It's, you know, it's, yeah. I don't actually think anything's in God Emperor tier. But I will tell you what's in S tier. You're not going to be surprised to see these classes whatsoever, right? There's no surprises here, I think. I think this is all standard. We all know what's going on. That's right. We've got Mechanist, Power Mechanist. You could also do Combi Mechanist as well, if that's your thing. Pretty hard build to play, but very, very strong if you know how to do it. Virtuoso, Spectre, Mirage, and Scourge. These, to me, are the classes that you can take into a pug and you can absolutely crush with, right? If you guys hate Mechanist, then you can imagine that I put God Emperor tier for Mechanist. And actually, you know, I'll give a little bit of a leak here. I think that the build that Nika told me a little bit about, which is, there's kind of like an illegal build where you run full DPS mech, but you just run the alacrity traits, basically. So, in other words, you run the support build, but you're full damage the entire time. If you stack a bunch of those, that actually is pretty busted. It's pretty ridiculous, to be honest. Pretty wild. But it just like the standard Power Mechanist. Absolutely insane build, right? But I don't regard it as fundamentally broken, right? And that's what I'm putting in God Emperor tier. Okay. And we can just kind of go over the reasoning here quickly. Mech, very durable, fully ranged, loads of passive damage. Shift Signet is amazing. Good CC baked into that. Perfect DPS package. That's it. It does everything, right? You've got AoE, you got range, you got self-healing. You can take healing turret and heal your team, right? You love to see it. Very good build. Virtuoso, kind of a similar story. 1200 range, great defensive utility baked into it with Blade Turn Requiem. Your F4 block, excellent CC, great Mesmer utility. You can blink, you can portal, you can give stability, you can remove boons. Good damage, a lot of it 1200 range. Very solid stuff. Evasion built into your kit as well a lot of the time. Very good, awesome build. Just flat out, it's amazing. Spectre, kind of a similar thing here. Again, people are a bit Thief-averse because in general, Thief is just not super popular. But amazing crowd control, heals your group to more or less full every 10 seconds because of Consume Shadows. Just amazing utility there. Lacks a bit of cleave damage. You know, not the best air effect damage, but does really well. Excellent damage, excellent utility. Spectre, 100% up there. If you can play it well, it's a monstrous build. Mirage, again, very skill sensitive here, but monstrous build, crazy damage output, Mesmer utility baked into it. It does all the Mesmer things. It has a good time. It can dodge while doing anything. It can dodge while reviving. It can dodge while attacking. Makes it really good for kind of reactively avoiding mechanics and mitigating damage, right? It's very, very strong. On certain fights, it's absolutely disgusting. That's just the way it is. Scourge. Scourge is particularly insane when you stack it, but in my opinion, it's the ultimate DPS build. If I'm thinking I'm going to pug raids on DPS, I play Scourge. I just do. Because ranged, It's got damage reduction for each shade you have up for a total of 15%. It's got 20k HP. It can cleanse condies. It can barrier. It can spectral grass things. It can epidemic things. It can take flesh golem if it needs to. It does loads of area of effect damage. It's got it all, right? It really has it. It's like... It's the DPS build. It's the quintessential do everything, be really good at all of the things, jack of all trades, master of basically everything, right? It's Scourge. Of course, a little bit lower damage compared to some of the other options here, I'd say. But just the fact that it can do what it does, you know, throw the boon removal in there as well, which is quite nice. It's fully ranged, really tanky. Really keeps it up there in S tier, in my opinion. Simple as that. A tier. Bladesworn. Now... I'm actually going to explain this, and we're going to go over this again here. In high-level play, speedrunning, Bladesworn is God Emperor tier. But this tier list is not that. This tier list is talking about how much value, how much kind of carry potential are you getting out of this if you're playing in a pug group, right? If you're playing just, you know, with the gang, playing with the gang, you know, just a little bit of casual fun time raiding. And as a result of that, I think Bladesworn, it is obviously going to deliver massive damage output if you play it extremely well. Okay? But damage is just damage, right? That's not necessarily going to carry you, right? And that's why Bladesworn, A tier, right? In high level, God Emperor tier, simple as that. Similar vein kind of Soul Beast. Just a very robust damage option. Awesome burst damage. Good chunk of range now as well, with Axe being quite strong and Longbow also being brought into the mix too. So actually very solid DPS option all around. Can also do some fun stuff. I mean, it'll be a bit of a DPS loss obviously to do this, but you can even do some stance share if you really need to. Has some like niche utility, like some, well, not even niche, some nifty utility you can bring to the table, but usually just like a very aggressive, mega damaging build here. Soul Beast, very, very good. Very, very good option. Not quite as broken as stuff in A tier, in my opinion, but definitely very, very broken. Next one is going to be a surprise. Firebrand. I think that DPS Firebrand is actually very underrated, simply because it's Guardian, right? I'm sorry, guys. It's Guardian. It's pretty wild, right? You can take... Your elite skill is very flexible here. You can take Mantra of Liberation very easily. You can take Stability. You can take CC. You know, you can do whatever you want. Renewed Focus to reset all your defensives again. Everything about this build is actually really strong. It has been nerfed. It used to do like 40k damage. Now I believe it's more in the lines of 35 or 36k. But it still is very much the complete package. Durable, has healing, has important boon access baked into its kit. High area of effect damage, high burst damage. It's a very, very strong option. Very, very strong, actually. Yeah. Yeah. I went there. You know, all the garments like, oh, but I got nerfed. Nope. DPS Firebrand is still good. Now, here's where things get a little frisky. Here's where things get a little bit spicy. I'm so tempted to do it. Scrapper. This build is actually unhinged. This is a secretly unhinged build. This is a borderline illegal build. Power Scrapper. 35k DPS. Excellent burst damage. Function gyro. Block. Permanent 5k barrier on your own self. Has some range damage with grenades. You can run rifle if you want even more range damage. Quite mobile. Has super speed application baked into it because you take the gyro trait on this build. Scrapper. Criminally underrated DPS option, right? Immortal build. Can even tank if you wanted to very easily, actually. And has loads of cool defensive stuff you can do to carry your team. Absolutely A-tier build. Now we do need another tier. Give me one moment. This is hard to say weird. No, hard to say tier. And that's going to be Untamed. I think this build is actually very sensitive to not only your skill, but your team's skill. It is potentially broken, actually, because of how much damage output it has. It's pretty wild. However, it is super hard to pull off. There are not many people in the game who practice the build enough to get value out of it. It is the wrong color, actually. Let me slightly adjust the... Is it more like that one? No, it's more like... Oh, actually, wait. That'll do. I'm just going to make it blue. Yeah, look, I'm going to troll you guys by making this one blue, okay? Enjoy that. Weird build. Super weird build. And I don't really know how to place it. That's why it's going in weird tier. I think there's definitely an argument to be made. It could be in A tier for sure. Or potentially even in even higher tiers than that. But I think it's just a weird build that is super situational and very dependent on your environment. And just kind of doesn't work on some bosses as well. So yeah, weird tier. Hard to say tier for Untamed. Next up is going to be B tier. And that's Daredevil. Solid option, rock solid DPS, has some cool nifty utility in raids. Definitely hamstrung a little bit. I was talking with Left earlier about this, and yeah, the problem with Thief is that it's very reliant on getting the correct raid stolen skills. Like if you had Magnetic Bomb, oh yeah. Thief, very juicy, absolutely delicious. Delectable, my friends. But you don't always have access to your perfect stolen skills. And as a result of that, it kind of struggles to be a little bit consistent. But definitely a good option. Brings great CC. Obviously pretty easy to play. Brings some good damage output. Good area of effect damage as well. Just a solid class there. And next up is going to be Renegade. Underrated build, actually. I think people have really stopped playing this, but I actually think it is rather good. Very underrated. Does around 37k damage, 37k DPS with allies around you. Is a lot of ranged with the short bow, right? Good utility with color as well. We've got a good heal skill that we can heal our allies with. We have Soul Cleave to further sustain and increase the damage of our allies. Good area of effect crowd control with Dark Razor's Daring. Good toolkit, good rev toolkit in the mix there. Wouldn't say it's super, super busted anymore compared to what it used to be. Kind of in the Righteous Rebel days, right? Or the truly Unchained Soul Cleave Summit days. But very, very good, actually. An excellent choice, actually, if you want to kind of play a very solid, rock-solid, robust, independent DPS. But you can even throw out a bit of Alacrity out there as well if you need to as well. But yeah, that's going to be B tier for Renegade. Harbinger's going to end up here as well. I'm almost like tempted to actually rate Harbinger even lower than this, because to me it's a bit of a like, you do damage, which is kind of cool, but you hit really hard on this build, actually. It's a lot of DPS, and you do have some of that Necromancer goodness, like some of the crowd control effects there that you can bring to the table. Not amazing CC, but definitely okay. It's a bit weird to play in content, because a lot of the time your conditions will get cleansed off you, so you can't transfer them, which is weird, which kind of actually does a lot, because fun fact, half of the damage from Blood is Power is actually transferring the conditions, right, to your target. So not being able to do that is ouch, right? It is big ouchie. But yeah, I actually think because of it being relatively low utility and not bringing a crazy amount of value to the table, I'd put it in B tier, but a lot of damage. But there you go. There you go. And C tier is very wide to me, because here we find the patchy builds, right? We find the builds that are actually pretty cool at doing something, but have kind of gaping holes in them that don't really make them fully complete. And just straight up, we're gonna have a lot of builds here. C tier is pretty massive. There are a lot of like thumbs up builds. Good build, right? Definitely needs a little bit of love from ArenaNet. And let's just go ahead and fill that up right now. It's going to be Reaper, Herald, Deadeye, Weaver, Tempest, Hollowsmith, Dragon Hunter, Catalyst, Berserker, Willbender, Chronomancer, Vindicator, Core Engie as well is getting thrown into the mix. Is that all of them? I believe that is about all the things I want to put in C tier. Do we want to put anything else in there? No. I don't think so. So, long story short, these builds, they do damage. They can perform that role, no problem. Right? But what you'll see with a lot of B tier and up is that they bring a lot of utility, a lot of value. They'll have some defensive support, some kind of wacky utility, you know, like a portal or something like that, right? Or super speed or reviving, right? Or stability access or massive burst damage like Blade Sworn and Soul Beast, right? These builds do damage, and some of them do some cool stuff. They actually do some really cool stuff. Because Herald has boons, has great crowd control, kind of sucks when you swap the staff. Reaper has awesome cleave damage, removes boons, right, and has incredible crowd control. Nice. Chronomancer has, again, all the nifty utility, some decent DPS thrown in there, can do the Mesmer stuff. Not bad. Weaver actually has great damage. You're looking at kind of high 30s now, actually, in terms of DPS, and even has some good defenses, right? You can use Obsidian Flesh to survive. You can reflect a little bit, you know, that's not bad, right? That's pretty okay. Tempest, again, has some decent damage output, can do stuff like, you know, extend boons out potentially, wash the pain away on allies, even rebound. Hollowsmith, good cleave damage, good CC, right? A good amount of range pressure. Dragon Hunter, excellent burst damage output, has a cool block, a cool heal. Vindicator can take stability with Jalis really easily, has some good DPS, very easy to play, has a block, held back by its dodge a little bit. It's a bit cumbersome, in my opinion, to play. Hollow and DH just don't do enough damage. Ellie needs more utility. I think the utility skills on Core Elementalist or Weaver and just aggressive Tempest builds need to be a little bit less selfish, or you lose a lot of damage by taking defensive utilities on Ellie. That probably needs to change a little bit to make them more group-oriented, to mirror how other classes are. Deadeye, it's just very niche, right? Like, Deadeye is amazing on certain fights, like, say, Kadim or Kadim 2, where you need to be at range the entire time. It's amazing there. Doesn't really quite have what it takes. Herald could probably just use a little bit more damage overall. Berserker, it's good, you know, but it just does damage. Willbender, just does damage, right? You know, you can take stability, I guess. But, you know, there are better ways you can do that, right? Kind of across the board. So that's why those builds are in C tier. Hopefully that makes sense. They're just very like, needs a little bit more. Needs a bit more. A bit more. And then we're good. But almost there. Deadeye, by the way, good on Harvest Temple Challenge mode. Because you can use Shadow Step to teleport into the greens. So that's kind of fun. Not too bad. D tier. These are the builds that... They're kind of like... They're like almost copies of the C tier builds, but not as good. So basically, Core Ellie is kind of not as good as Weaver, right? Core Guardian is not as good as Dragon Hunter. Spellbreaker and Core Warrior are not as good as Berserker. Although, to be fair, actually, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but Spellbreaker actually does a lot of damage these days. I can certainly see that build actually ending up being pretty decent. I think you could actually make an argument that Spellbreaker could be C tier. It actually hits surprisingly hard after the recent buffs, actually. Core Rev is going to get slapped in there as well. Again, it's just, it's like Herald, except worse, right? And then finally, we know what's coming. It is the Oh No tier. Core Necromancer, Core Ranger. These are like, oh no, unfortunate. Core Mesmer, Core Thief, and Druid. I mean, do guys, don't even think about Druid. Maybe I won't even put it on there. Like, Druid is not a, wait, I can't remove it. Wow, apparently the tier list actually hates Druid, but Druid is not a DPS build, right? Like, it's a support spec. It's very, you know, it doesn't even deserve, it shouldn't even be on this list, right? Because it just doesn't make any sense. It's not a damage build, so it's not applicable, right? Is where it should be. But yeah, there you go. Simple as that. Core Thief can do 22k. Yeah, but 22k is not good, right? That, you know, that's less than like quickness appliers, right? That's not where you want to be. It's not ideal, my friends. But yeah, that's how it is. Oh no tier is fully activated. But yeah, that kind of sums it up, in my opinion. I would love Core Necro to actually have a thing that it does, but right now it just doesn't do anything. It's like, imagine if Scourge was terrible. Congratulations, Core Necromancer. You know, there's actually a really fun open world power Core Necro build, actually, by the way. It's actually really cool. You kind of spam fear. It's on hardstuck.gg, by the way. And hey, if you want to see the best core builds possible for open world content, go check out hardstuck.gg. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Very nice. Very, very nice. But that's going to about round things out, actually, in my opinion, for this. That is the end of that. That's the damage tier list, the DPS damage dealer tier list. We've done all the other ones, and here we go. We can maybe compare all of them on screen right now, okay? And then you can be completely confused. Here's defensive supports. There you go. Enjoy. Defensive supports kind of invading the screen over here. And then we have offensive supports moving in over there, covering up the other one. But yeah, I don't know. Look, we're gonna fix that in post, okay? We're gonna replace what's above me right now with a beautifully blended view of all three of them. Maybe like one giant one merged together. So we can actually have a big overview of how the metagame actually looks with all of the builds that, you know, tend to do pretty well. But, you know, DPS, I think the DPS tier list here, there are a lot of builds that have potential that just need some number tweaks. Like, a lot of the stuff in C tier, if you mess around with the numbers a little bit, it becomes very, very strong very, very quickly, actually. Because a lot of these classes, they don't really have design issues. Outside of Ellie, I'd say Ellie has some design issues, but everything else is fine. It just needs to, like, be tuned up a little bit, and it ends up being pretty good. Oh yeah, bonus meme, Core Engie. You might, is that a mistake? Actually, no. Core Engie is like a 35k pure ranged build. Pretty funny, actually. But yeah, there you go. Yeah, Deadeye, yeah, a little tricky. You can't move. Crouch is definitely not ideal. But look, what if you could move while crouching at half speed? Imagine you could, like, RP walk with crouch. That's big, you know? I mean, that sounds a little bit scary in PvP, although maybe not. Like, that's, Ooh. I like that, right? That's content. That sounds pretty funny to me, actually. Yeah. Take it further. Oh, crawl? Oh, that's huge. The roleplay, you're crawling through the bushes prone. That's actually insane. I like that. So, just to reiterate, I rated all of these builds on how much, like, carry power they have in pug groups, usually for raid and strike content. I think in Fractals, the tier list does look pretty different, to be honest, because Fractals are very different to instance content, but broadly speaking, I think you could kind of apply the same things, right? Like, the same builds are going to be super powerful in Fractals as well, with a few kind of adjustments, of course, because the content is so different. But anyway, I think the really big takeaway from this is that there are actually a huge amount of good builds out there, right? That are just waiting to be unleashed. And, more importantly, that the meta, in my opinion, is held back by a lack of diversity and big gaps in defensive supports, right? Healers. And that means that players kind of really latch onto this one comp. It's a lot of heal mechs, a lot of heal firebrands, right? And the lack of these other healers being more competitive is really slowing down the meta from actually changing. I also do think that, and this is weird, this is going to sound super weird, but if you make Ritualist gear more accessible, that is such a big deal, right? Because all of a sudden, you're going to see more Mirage stuff. You're going to see more Spectre with Alacrity, Mirage with Alacrity. Renegade would probably actually see more play because people like Renegade, but it's kind of annoying to get gear for because of Ritualist gear. Seriously, ArenaNet, please improve the accessibility of Ritualist gear. It would make a big difference, in my opinion. But yeah. There you go. Those are kind of my thoughts on the tier list. That's all the tier list. And actually, as a reminder to everyone here, right, we don't have all of these builds on hardstuck.gg, but we actually have almost all of them with full written guides on hardstuck.gg. They'll be linked in the video description on YouTube and probably in a pinned comment as well. So go check them all out and find out, like, the power of the builds within. Hell yeah. I love to see it. Let's go. Get in there right now. Let's juice up hard, gamers. Crash the website. Let's do it. Yeah. Fun. Fun stuff. And actually, I'm pretty happy about this. I really like how this tier list has turned out. I am a big fan of this, actually. And I've got to say, I really hope that this is a useful tool on maybe kind of thinking about how the metagame works and fits together, and a bit of fun too. One bonus disclaimer here at the end. Don't take this stuff super seriously. You're not going to get kicked from groups for like, oh, you're playing a C-tier build, you're trash. Absolutely not. In fact, a lot of the builds in C-tier, you're actually going to see pop up a fair bit in pugs, actually, right? The pugs that aren't completely enslaved to the meta, that is, right? But you're not going to get kicked for playing this stuff. And I very deliberately rated this such that the builds kind of towards the bottom of the tiers are still solid. right? It's just that the ones in the higher tiers are kind of like super busted, right? And pretty broken in that regard. So hopefully it was fun. Don't go too crazy. Don't follow the meta with absolute, unwavering blinkered dedication. Have fun, play what you think sounds cool, and enjoy the game. That's all I've got to say when it comes to tier lists. I return to the rock of contemplation in that regard. And I love to see it. That is the end of the tier list, gamers. GG. Thanks for watching, my friends. I got to do the YouTube bit as well. Guys, if you're on YouTube right now, leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me your thoughts on the metagame. Tell me what you think about the tier list. Okay, do you like the new format? Do you hate the new format? You tell me. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to share the tier list everywhere, right? Make sure to use your valuable time to give me additional internet clout and internet points. Because that is your purpose, My purpose is to do the tier list. Your purpose is to shamelessly promote me constantly, everywhere. But that's it. Thanks for watching, gamers. I'm out.